On March 28, 2025, Beirut was shaken by a series of Israeli airstrikes. This marked the first time the city had been targeted since the November 2024 ceasefire with Hezbollah. The strikes sent shockwaves through Lebanon and the international community. The fragile peace that had held for a few short months was now in jeopardy. The question on everyone's mind: would this be the spark that ignites a new conflict in the region? The primary target of the Israeli attack was a building in Dahiyeh. This southern suburb of Beirut is known to be a Hezbollah stronghold. The Israeli Defense Forces identified the building as a storage facility for Hezbollah drones. A truck was also targeted in the attack. The airstrikes caused significant damage to the targeted building. Plumes of smoke filled the Beirut skyline, visible for miles. Videos shared on social media showed terrified residents fleeing the area, desperately seeking cover from the bombs. The attack left many wondering about the potential casualties. It was a stark reminder of the ever-present threat of violence in the region. The strikes on Beirut did not occur in isolation. They were part of a larger pattern of escalating tensions between Israel and Hezbollah. The international community watched with bated breath, hoping for a de-escalation of the situation. The stakes were incredibly high, with the potential for a wider conflict looming large. The coming days would be critical in determining the fate of the region. The airstrikes on Beirut were the culmination of several days of escalating tension. The situation began to deteriorate on March 21, 2025, when Israel intercepted 2 rockets fired from Lebanon. This was the second such incident in a week, raising concerns of a more serious confrontation. No group claimed responsibility for firing the rockets. However, Israel was quick to blame Hezbollah. In response to the rocket fire, the IDF conducted a number of airstrikes in southern Lebanon. This further inflamed tensions, setting the stage for the more aggressive actions that were to follow. Prior to launching the airstrikes on Beirut, Israel took the unusual step of issuing evacuation warnings to residents in the area. These warnings were delivered through social media and a tactic known as roof knocking. This involves firing warning shots near a target to encourage civilians to evacuate. The Lebanese government, fearing further strikes, made the decision to close schools in the south of the country. The situation was becoming increasingly volatile, with the potential for a wider conflict growing by the day. The international community called for restraint from both sides, but their pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. The Israeli airstrikes on Beirut drew swift condemnation from the international community. Leaders from around the world expressed their concern over the escalation of violence and called for restraint from both sides. The fragile ceasefire that had been in place since November 2024 was now hanging by a thread. French President Emmanuel Macron was among the most vocal critics of the Israeli action. He condemned the airstrikes as unacceptable and a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Macron called on Israel to immediately cease its attacks and return to the negotiating table. The United Nations also expressed its deep concern over the escalating violence. UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon Janine Hennis-Plasschaert warned against further escalation and urged both sides to respect the ceasefire agreement. She emphasized the need for a political solution to the conflict, stressing that violence would only lead to more suffering. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs issued a stark warning about the situation in Gaza. Jens Leierke, a spokesperson for OCHA, described the Israeli actions in Gaza as bearing the hallmarks of atrocity crimes. He called for an immediate end to the violence and for the protection of civilians in the conflict zone. The Israeli airstrikes on Beirut have significantly escalated tensions in the region. The fragile ceasefire that had held for a few short months is now in serious jeopardy. The international community is watching anxiously, hoping to avoid a descent into another devastating conflict. Israel has defended its actions, claiming that the airstrikes on Beirut were a necessary response to Hezbollah's violations of the ceasefire. They maintain that the targeted building was being used to store drones and other weapons. However, many in the international community remain unconvinced by Israel's justification for the attacks. The Lebanese government, while condemning the Israeli attacks, has also reiterated its commitment to the ceasefire agreement. However, the situation remains incredibly volatile. Hezbollah has yet to respond to the strikes on Beirut, but many fear that a retaliatory attack is only a matter of time. The human cost of this latest escalation is already being felt. Reports from Gaza indicate a dire humanitarian situation. Hospitals and ambulances have been targeted, and access for humanitarian aid has been completely shut down. The international community must act swiftly to prevent further suffering and loss of life.